Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Queer Opera Conversations. This informal video series is dedicated to speaking with LGBTQIA artists and allies about how we all can make the world a more interesting place, an equitable place through opera. My name is Chuck Dillard. I am the founder and artistic director of Queer Opera, and today I am very pleased to have a special guest to talk to all the way from Germany, Holden Madagame. Holden, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chuck.
Thank you. So if you can bear listening to me talk for another minute, I want to tell you a little bit more about him. Holden was born in Michigan, went to the University of Michigan School of Music, which is an amazing program with a fantastic voice faculty. Studied with Stephen West there. Now currently lives and works in Germany. Attended the Glyndebourne Festival Academy rather in 2017, and continues to sing professionally all throughout Europe and the United States. Holden is a passionate voice for trans visibility in opera and in classical music. Holden, is there anything that I left out of your bio that you want our viewers to know? I know there's brief.
I don't think so. No, those are the highlights.
We'll cover some more details a little bit later. One question that I like to start with all of my guests is about the spark that got you started. So how did you
Mm,
know from whatever age that you wanted to use your voice to make music?
mm. It was actually pretty late because it wasn't really until middle school
Hmm.
where I didn't want to be in choir. I wanted to be in band, but my parents wouldn't let me. Um, and and so I was like whatever, like the computer intern or something. I was one of like two computer interns. And but I was taking piano lessons, and the choir teacher was like, "You play piano, join choir."
Right.
um, and yeah, and so I was like, "Okay, fine." And then I was like, "Oh, actually, this is fun. I like this, and I'm good at this."
Yeah.
So yeah, so then I just kept doing choir, and I still didn't think I didn't even. I mean, I come from like a you know like a bodunk town in Michigan, so it's just like I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is fun for now, and then I'm
Right.
gonna study medicine or something. I don't know. And then one of my teachers, well, the new choir teacher there was just like, you can study this, like you can have a degree in this and do this. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So
Now, and you could even make, millions of dollars doing this as well. Right. Yes, exactly. So, obviously, the world has changed a lot in the last
Mm,
few months. Um, One of the things that I like to keep telling myself is, what can we do now that we couldn't do before? And things like this
mm,
are at least for me, something that I can do now. What are you doing in your field, either as far as hobbies or opera,
mm,
to keep yourself busy and creating during this time?
mm. Well, at the moment, I mean, I'm not actually singing so much. I'm sort of I'm doing something which I've wanted to do for a while, which is to sort of learn some coding languages and study programming a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Um, and so I'm kind of just taking some time to do that and do kind of do something totally different, but also something that really supplements just my life in general.
Right.
In which I mean, I've been brainstorming with um, people, just like ways I can also use that with music, or like with the music industry. But yeah, but I've really been enjoying that, and sort of exercising different parts of my brain and
Hmm.
different capabilities that I don't often get to exercise. So that's kind of what I've been doing with my time mostly.
Very cool. And you're doing that online in a virtual educational environment.
Yeah, there's lots of free resources. There's amazing resources. The two things I've been using a lot are Free Code Camp and the Odin Project. I've been following those pretty closely, and then I also bought some books because I'm an old man and like using books.
Like actual physical books,
Physical books where I'm like,
turning
so is that
pages.
what a if else statement is. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So, but it's actually really nice because then it just gives me a break from screens because our whole lives are in the computer now. So,
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Cool. Um, well, let's move on to some opera and queer topics. Um, and again, something that I kind of ask everybody is, when is the first time that you felt, or when is the first time that you saw yourself represented on stage, or when was the first time you saw something that wasn't heteronormative cisgender on stage,
Mm,
and maybe you discovered there's a place for me in
mm.
the opera field.
I think it was definitely the first time that and I didn't see it in person, but I saw Brigitte Fassbender's Rosenkavalier. And I just like, it was the first time I'd really seen like whatever sort of cocktail my queerness is
Right.
on stage.
Uh-huh.
And and I don't care what anybody says, that's queer. All of those relationships are queer. Everything in that opera is queer,
Yes.
so and nobody can convince me otherwise. And when I saw that, I was like, God, that's me on stage, there's I wasn't seeing it anywhere else at the time. Um and uh yeah, and that was it. I just like couldn't let it go, haven't let
Yeah.
it go.
Amazing. Yeah, I think Octavian and Composer, especially, are a couple pants roles that,
Mm,
straight, gay, however you identify, like, that is a sexy role that
yeah,
that you
absolutely.
can really, get turned on by,
Yeah.
and does allow people to say, um, there's flexibility, there's room up there
Mm.
for um, I don't know, for uh, different things. It's not black and white anymore. So
Yes, absolutely. There's so much interpretation, so much. It's so many ways you can play with it, um,
right,
and because yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and it can come from the artist as well, like whatever sort of natural, whatever, yeah, whatever natural gender or queerness it can speak through those sorts of roles.
right.
Um,
Um, Speaking of seeing yourself represented on stage, I'd love to hear a little bit more about Good Country. Um,
mm, mm.
I know a little bit about it, but for our viewers, could you talk about the production and also the title character and what his story was?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got asked to do this. Um, what oh my god, so that was like last year, so like I guess 2 years ago now. And basically the story was basically the story in the it was basically done, but the music hadn't been written. They were basically waiting to work with an actual trans singer to do this.
Wow.
Um, and uh, yeah, and so it got written very fast. And um, it was such a good process because I reviewed the libretto as well and was like, okay, well, these things, like there wasn't much to change, but there's just like some things where I was like, okay, you could word this in a different way, or maybe you could like change the focus in this part, or like whatever. Such a loving, wonderful, supportive process. And being able to, because I mean, I wasn't playing myself.
Right.
The character is so different from who I am and what I am. But it was so wonderful to be able to play a representation of a transmasculine, like explicitly transmasculine character. It's complete game changer.
Not
Um,
having to ignore that part of yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
not having to. I don't know. I mean, not having to hide it explicitly, because that's
Right.
usually what we do. We do have to hide whatever that is.
Right.
And I've talked about it with a lot of people, but basically a lot of the Fach system is just gender. It's like gender which overlaps with uh, types of voices, but it very strongly gendered in the way that the characters are presented. Those
Right.
archetypes are so strong, and if
Right.
you as a person do not fit with your Fox gender, um, you have to work real hard against it. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And so the character's name, Charlie Parker, is that right?
Parkhurst.
Parkhurst, that's right.
Yeah.
Could you just talk a little bit about uh, who he was and why his story is significant, I guess?
Yeah. Well, basically, Charlie. I mean, if you look up if you look up Charlie Parkhurst, then you'll often find things about Charlie Parkhurst being the first woman who ever voted in the United States, or a woman who dressed up as a man, or whatever.
Right.
Like that's basically what you'll find if you look up Charlie Parkhurst, which I actually found it very difficult to research while I was doing while I was looking up things for the role. But the team was very supportive and basically were like, hey, we can do that for you. Basically we did a different not even a retelling. I wouldn't even say. It's just like the way it very well could have been is this that Charlie Parkhurst was a trans man.
Right.
And he was a stagecoach driver in the California Gold Rush, and basically was a total badass. Basically, we in the opera we didn't try to like tell Charlie's life story or anything. It was basically just like one important day for Charlie, a fictional day for Charlie, where the secret that he's trans came out, and where a beautiful moment happens with this other character, the barmaid, where she basically is like, that's fine. Yeah, it's fine. You can be whoever you want, and you're a wonderful person, and there's no reason that I should deny that from you.
Yeah.
So
It's a beautiful story, and if any story was made for the opera stage, it is good country. Is this show fully conceived? I think the performance last year was a workshop performance. Is
yes,
that correct?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a workshop performance. So
Okay.
they are currently looking to do more workshops to eventually have an actual premiere.
Awesome.
Cool. An official premiere.
So those of you listening, look for Good Country in the future. It's going to be an amazing show. Let's talk just a little bit about pedagogy and voices, specifically for trans people, if you don't mind, because I know you've spoken a lot about this on your blog and in other interviews. I imagine there may be trans singers that find this video that are frustrated with their voice, frustrated with their instruction, and not sure if opera or singing is a viable option for them. What would you say to someone who's maybe between bachelor's and master's in the early 20s that is looking for a voice teacher to help them with this transition from a mezzo voice, in your case, to a tenor voice?
Primary thing, find a pedagogue, find a good pedagogue. What is non-negotiable is finding someone who respects you as a trans person.
Right.
That's
Right.
non-negotiable. But they have to be a good pedagogue, not just someone who respects you and supports you as a person,
Right.
which can sometimes be difficult to differentiate.
Right.
Because I mean, we as queer and trans people are just are looking for people to respect us as human beings, and so but make sure that you're finding someone who has very strong pedagogy and who doesn't obsess about voice types. Because early in my transition, people are like, "Oh, are you gonna be a tenor? Are you gonna be a baritone? Maybe you'll be a countertenor." I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't even sing an octave right now. Just like chill, you know." My teacher, Stephanie Weiss, my current teacher, was wonderful, and she just is like, no bullshit about this kind of stuff, and just like doesn't care. Just like, are you singing well or are you not singing well? And if for the specific voice, whatever your voice is, we're going to work with that. And that's what needs to happen. If a teacher is obsessing about your fach, run away. Just or if you really think that otherwise they're a very, very good pedagogue, just be like, hey, we can't talk about this. Just like work with my voice.
Right.
But
Um, could I ask, were you the first trans singer that your current teacher has taught? Did she have a lot of experience with trans voices, or was it just because of her amazing pedagogy that she was able to work with you?
I think before me, I don't think she had any experience before me. She has now taught several trans
Hmm.
people, but I think before me she didn't have any trans singers. And it's just through pedagogy. You
Right.
don't need special pedagogy. I mean, it's you do need to know some very basic things about trans voices, um, and there are ways to work with trans people and trans voices, which um, yeah, which you can do better than other teachers if you know what those things are.
Right.
But it's not such a totally different world if you know how to work with voices and with changing voices, whatever that means, whether it's trans or cisgender. Then that's what's important.
Right.
Um,
And so I guess what I'm getting at is that if there is a young trans singer that is looking for a voice teacher, they don't necessarily need to find someone that has loads of experience with trans singers. They
no,
just need someone that knows what they're talking about.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I am amazed at the number, not amazed, I'm refreshed at the number of conferences and presentations that are going on at NOA
Mm,
and NATS about transitioning voices. Here in Portland in March, our regional NATS chapter is doing
mm.
um, a pedagogy weekend on transitioning and non-binary voices. So I mean,
Oh, wonderful.
it
That's
is
wonderful to hear.
yeah, I'm really excited about that. Queer Opera's
Mm,
going to perform, and it's going to be great.
yeah.
Um, moving back to specifically to your vocal transition, I want to talk about repertoire. You had mentioned
Mm,
during uh, the period in the period between mezzo and tenor, you went back to some pretty simple
mm.
repertoire to lean into. Were those the 24 Italian art songs
Yeah,
specifically?
exactly.
Yeah, great. Um, could you talk just a little bit about some moments working through some of that simple repertoire before your voice really came into its own that let you know you were on the right track,
Mm.
that you had made the right decision in terms of sticking with singing and into the professional career, just some encouraging nuggets?
Sure. Um, yeah, so when I was just I was basically just doing the Italian art songs, I was just doing them. Um, and there was a while where I couldn't really do anything else. Uh, but I could do those, and that was really important for me to
Mhm.
have something that I could do, and also that I knew already. Um, and slowly working through those, and slowly being able to sing more and more of those, and sing them better, um, is it was not only encouraging just from point of like, oh, I can sing this better, but also like I'm working through certain technical things that um, maybe I wouldn't have even noticed before, but I
Mm,
did like there's things that a lot of times our voices do naturally. All our voices do different things naturally, but
right.
well, we all have different natural abilities, and when those change, when those flip on on its head, then it's you work through things. You're like, wow, I've never had problems with that, and that's weird. But now I'm working through that, and now I've learned something
Mm,
about my voice and about voices in general, which is exciting, and it's very encouraging. And also being able to, yeah, I don't know how to put this. This is less about actual vocal ability, but more you develop a very deep relationship with these songs
mm,
when you've done that as well.
mhm. It it sounds like that's good advice for anyone,
Yeah, yeah,
honestly,
totally.
that's studying voice. Um, that singers that aren't um, dealing with the same things necessarily possibly take this for granted. But
Mm,
I mean, you really had to deconstruct everything and put
mm,
it back together. And in the process of doing so, you just honed your craft in a way that most people never do, and the
mm,
repertoire as well.
mhm.
Oh, that's really. inspiring. You should give some master classes to some of my college students, I think, so that
Oh, I don't know if I could do that, but
um, so here's an interesting question about roles and retelling of opera roles. As we all know,
Mm,
um, opera is very heteronormative
mm,
and a little bit binary and not much room for a spectrum on the opera stage. But as one of my previous guests had said, that queerness has been in a lot of opera roles and opera plots the whole
mm,
time. We've just never sussed it out.
mm,
Um, is is there a role in opera that you can think of? And I'll give sort of my example before I let
mm.
you answer this question. Is there a role that you can think of that perhaps deserves a retelling from a trans person's point of view, um, to give it more dimension or more depth? And as I had mentioned in the questions that I sent to you, my example is always Sid from Albert Herring, and I've done that show a few times, and I think, you know what, you're kind of a jackass, and I think it's because you're just angry because you're actually gay and in love with
Yeah.
Albert, and just come out of the closet already. But
Hmm.
maybe that's because I think, I don't know, whatever. But
No, it's so fun. It's funny that you say that because I was maybe talking to my partner or friends. I think I was talking to my partner about it that Albert Albert himself would make a great trans character, and
yes,
so like it I don't know. I can imagine it really clearly.
I can
There's so
too.
many things about it, and so it's funny that you mentioned that because that's actually the first thing that would have come to my mind if you even if you hadn't mentioned
I
Albert
mean,
Herring.
Lady Billows, we can go
Yeah,
on with the show.
yeah, exactly. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah. So absolutely, Albert Herring, for example, and a lot of Britain stuff. But
Hmm.
the next thing that came to mind was there's so many opportunities in like Baroque opera, in like Handel operas,
Mm.
that are just ripe for interpretation wherever you want to go with it. Like there's um, there's so many things you can play with in it, in either explicit ways, very obvious ways, or just like, how do I put this? Just having the a slight, how do I want to put this? Um, having slightly more normality with queerness and transness,
Yeah.
and you can kind of do that with Handel because it's like it's basically like a canvas.
Mm.
Um,
Yes.
So that's the first thing that I thought of, and there's no specific roles that I'm thinking of as far as trans characters, but um, I did see a wonderful production of Xerxes right before all of the Corona stuff kicked off, um, with Xerxes as Liberace, basically, and it was just mind-blowingly good. It was so good.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
when I saw that, I was just like, man, there's just like queer shit all this like spread all over the stage. It's so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not opera, but I have always had a thought about Frauenliebe und Leben,
Ah,
that Chamisso, the poet, was, I mean, obviously trans people have been around as long as people have been around. And uh, whenever I hear that poetry, knowing that a man sat down and wrote it, I'm thinking that is a trans woman's voice if I have ever heard one.
mm,
And so I have always wanted to find 21st century representation of that because mezzos sing it so often and feel kind of icky doing so because it's so um, it can be so outdated. But I just think that there's something more there that we haven't tapped into yet in terms of the
mm,
poetry.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Cool. So just a few final wrap-up questions, if I could. I know we're not doing a lot of art making right now, but do you have any projects on the books, a year off, that you can talk about? Any premieres or new roles you're
Mm.
excited about?
Well, I mean, my summer got totally destroyed. I,
Yeah.
but I had like three possible things that I was doing. One of them, I don't know if it's going to happen um, next summer, but I was going to do, and they're all just like character tenor roles. There's nothing that makes anybody else excited except for me. But but I was gonna do my first Dr. Blint from Fledermaus,
Oh, fun.
and which was going to be so fun. It was a really
Yeah.
great team, and it was yeah, just wonderful supportive team. Then the director comes from um, you know, straight theater. Sorry, the German word stuck itself in my head. Um, it comes from straight theater, and so she just had like a very different take, which I'm very comfortable with. And so and she and also the costume designers and also the intendant are just like very happy with me, just like me and anybody just expressing queerness
Sure.
and gender in different ways. And so she just kind of let me go and do whatever I
Awesome.
want. And so there's just, yeah, I really hope that it happens. I'm really excited for that to happen.
Great. And when would that be?
It would theoretically be next, like June, end of June, July,
2021.
2021.
All right. Fingers crossed for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to get back on stage immediately, but we won't talk about that right now. The last thing that I want to ask is, um, in doing some research for this interview, finding your website, finding your previous interviews, and your blog in particular, um, you are pretty frank and open about sharing yourself, um, having people ask questions, giving answers to questions people haven't asked or are afraid to
Mm,
ask. How how do you find the strength to do so? Why do you feel like you want
mm.
to be so open? Why is that so important to you?
For me, it's sort of a it I don't want to call it a duty, but I am now, I guess. It feels like a duty because like I have the privilege to do that, like not just sort of being perceived as male now, but also just like I have the support system. I have a huge support system. My family supports me, my friends support me. um, I am not uh, I mean, I'm not. I don't make a lot of money. But still, I'm not like fearing for paying rent and things like that. Like
Right.
I have the capability, and I also have the emotional capabilities
Mhm.
um, to do that. So I feel like I should, because not everybody has the situations or the abilities or the privilege to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I would never say that I expect everyone with privilege to do that, but I think if you can, then you should try at least to use some of that. And where my privilege is definitely in uh, emotionally articulating myself, especially through videos and through my blog. Um, so it's very important that I do that.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well said. So before this video goes live, I'm going to make sure that your website goes on the Queer Opera site so that people can can tap into that and get the resources they need to know more about you, to know more, just to know more, period. And
Great,
so thank you so much for your time today. This has been a great queer opera conversation, and can't wait to share it with everyone. Uh, in the meantime, keep your eyes out for Holden and your ears open. And that'll be it for today. Thank you all so much. And thanks especially to Holden for joining me.
thank you.
Thanks.